There's a saying out there that's something like, if you don't know who the annoying friend is in your friend group, it's probably you. And in the same way, I hope you don't think that about me, because this is another job rant. And again, in my opinion, I was not the issue. But today I'm talking about my EMS experience. So we had just recently moved to South Carolina, and I found a place that was seemed good enough, and it actually was pretty good. I started working at a place in Charleston, South Carolina, that was a private company, and at the time I didn't know the difference between private and county. That's a whole other story. So a disclaimer is I didn't quite get the full EMS experience because it was a private company, not a county. But I met a lot of cool people there. My only thing I wish I would have known is how little I knew being a completely new EMT. You go through the entire course and you have to pass a class, but at the end it is very different from once you actually get out there. When I started, I was with a paramedic for a bit, for about 2 months, and it was good enough. I didn't really make any waves. He wasn't entirely interested in helping me out that much, because he made it pretty clear that he was going to be quitting as soon as another job opened up for him, and I later kind of understood why. And so when he did quit, I got paired with a driver, and his name was John, and we actually became super good friends. But the only downside of that was that John was just a driver, and he was just doing it for fun because it was his retirement job. And he didn't have an EMT license, or even better, a paramedic license. And so it was just me that had medical training on our ambulance. Luckily, we mainly only did transfers because that's just how it worked. But very quickly, I was thrown to just be on my own. And that was wild for a bit, because it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. Admittedly, most of the people were stable, but it was just me, and John and I made it work for the most part, and it was pretty cool. A bunch of people recommended us. We even got to be like the face of our Facebook profile picture for a bit. Everyone seemed to like us. That was until this. I'm trying to think of what month it would have been. This was when COVID was just beginning to start, I think, and so all of our transfers went to almost zero. We went from doing close to 6 or 7 transfers a day to doing maybe 2. So stuff was really slow, and they were really making sure that we stayed active. That's something they really want you to do. So the famous push-up incident that I think was the beginning of my end.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Yeah. I don't even remember where I posted. I think I posted my Instagram story or something like that. So somehow someone found it. I don't know who it was. I'm thinking it was my friend who was in a lateral management position. Showed it to one of our other bosses, thinking it was cool, and they for some reason did not think it was very cool at all. So we get a call from our lieutenant, who is really nice. He was like, "Hey, we saw you were doing push-ups. Don't do that." And we're like, "Okay, we won't do that anymore." And we were out of the way and stuff, so it shouldn't have even mattered. And then we get home, and our more main boss was like, "Hey, don't do that." And we're like, "Okay, so-and-so already told us not to, but we extra won't now." And then I think it was a couple days later, something like that, another boss was like, "Hey," he pulled us aside and he was like, "Hey, I need you to sign this to say that you messed up." And we're like, "What?" And we're like, "Yeah, we heard about this, and this is I don't know what they called it. It was like a coaching agreement." And we're like, "Okay, but so-and-so told us not to do that, and also this other person told us not to do that. Did you know that?" He's like, "Oh, I didn't know that, but yeah, you guys can't do that." And we're like, "Okay." He's like, "We need you to sign this, saying that this is like a strike for your employment here." We're like, "All right, this is really dumb." And that was the end. We left it. But everyone else kind of around heard about this, and thought it was really silly, because we had now been told 3 times, reprimanded 3 times to not do this for a very minor incident, and I had dropped it. For some reason, I think that stirred up a fire in all of our employees of how kind of dumb things we're getting at our place. There's a joke in the EMS community that when things get bad, and maybe other communities too, but when things get bad, they throw a pizza party and hope it fixes it. And there's a multitude of other reasons why things are bad. Like, you can never be sure when you're gonna get home because you might get sent on a late call. There's never like properly working equipment, and this is where things really came to a head. Is that someone locked the keys in one of the ambulances that we had, and we needed to hire a locksmith to come out and get them out. So I was the only one there for some reason at the base that we had, and the locksmith couldn't open it. One of our bosses was the one that was called me. He was like, "Hey, where's so and so?" It's like, "Oh, he's not here. I don't know. Like, what do you need?" He's like, "Oh, I gotta go back somewhere to get a tool to open this up." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Okay, can you let him know that like I'll be back?" I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Maybe one of us could give it a try," or something like that. Laughing. He's like, "Oh yeah, tell him you're gonna try." And so then a couple minutes go by, and our boss shows up. I don't remember where he was. And I was like, "Hey, the locksmith came by, but he wasn't able to open it. He needed to go to get a tool. But he said that maybe we could help him, or we could show him how to do it, or something like that." And he was talking to someone else, and then he looks at me and he pulls me aside, and for clarity of the story, I'll use this specific language. He pulls me aside. He gets right up in my face and he says, "You know, kind of a sarcastic bitch, aren't you?" And I was very surprised because this just came out of nowhere. And the funny thing is that he didn't know that this was now my second time dealing with an angry old man. If you'll remember my old referee video. And you know, it's funny how much it scares people when you're like sure of yourself. Because I think that both of these men particularly had gone a long time without anyone ever saying no to them or ever questioning it. And this, again, in my referee story, the guy was slightly shorter than me. And this time there was no physical interaction, but he gets right up in my face, and he's red in the face, and he's furrowing his brow. And he wanted me to back up or something like that, but I didn't move. And I said, "Excuse me?" And he repeats himself, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You're telling all the employees here how bad of a boss I am, how I'm out to get you, how I don't care about anybody here." And I was like, I have no idea what you were talking about. And he was like, "You and John have been spreading lies here. I've been hearing it from everyone else around here." And I was like, "Dude, you gotta calm down." I told him, I was like, "You gotta calm down. Like, you are losing it." And this is a 55-year-old man that is just acting like a complete child. And, you know, I'd tell it to him, to his face even, that he was acting like a child that day. And here I am, I'm 21, 22 at this point. And he's screaming in my face, and he is pissed at me. And I don't remember how that specific conversation ended. I think I told him, "Well, this was just a joke, what I just said. But if you can't handle jokes, then I will not tell jokes around you." And I think I just left. He wanted to talk more, but I left. And then I'll let you be the judge. I'm going to tell you a couple of things that started happening after that altercation, and you can tell me if they're connected or not. From that day, I didn't really talk to the boss again, really, and I was there another 6 months. But they had a additional like $3 an hour for people that were working with drivers, because only one person had any medical training, and so I was receiving that extra $3 an hour. And then a couple weeks later, that additional $3 per hour suddenly disappears, and they make an announcement: "Hey, we're no longer doing the additional $3 per hour for people working with drivers, so everyone's going to be at the same rate again." And that only affected me and one other person who hardly ever worked, and so that mainly only affected me. And then very quickly, since we worked the mid shift, so we started at 11 a.m., very quickly we were no longer able to get like vehicles that really worked anymore. It was very hot in South Carolina, or just at least very humid. And so here's a couple pictures just to show like the equipment that I had to deal with. We could not get a seat at work half the time, and we were just told like, hey, you just give ice packs to your patients to keep them cold, and you be the judge of if you are an old lady paying hundreds of dollars for an ambulance trip, if this is a temperature that you would be comfortable sitting in when you are sick or near death a lot of times, and if that would seem an appropriate response. But that's what we were told to do, and that's how it went for a long time, unfortunately. And one time, this is the top. I can't believe it took me so long to remember about this. I made it a point, because it was my ambulance, that I wanted all of my equipment to be on my ambulance. Like, I wanted to make sure I had all like 50 things, like by state law you're supposed to have. So I would show up about like 5 minutes early, and I would check stuff for about 15 minutes. And John and I would go through our list. Is this here? Yep, this here, blah, blah, blah. No one else did that, ever. And so they would show up, get in their ambulance, go down to base. And I wanted to make sure everything was there, because you need some of that stuff sometimes. And so what they started doing to me is they would take stuff off of my ambulance before I got there to see if I caught that they had taken it off, because they did not want me to be checking stuff beforehand. They thought it was taking too long to do it. They're like, well, if you need to check it, you can show up an hour early to check it. And I'm like, I am not showing up an hour earlier to work to mitigate something that you are causing. And I caught them a bunch of times. But the thing is, one time I didn't catch them. And they took, what did they take? They took like a birthing blanket, like the tarp that you lay down when someone's giving birth. They took one of those off of my ambulance, and I didn't catch it because there's supposed to be like 3 of them, and there was 2. And they let me. We stationed down by the hospital, and one day they were always on us. Hey, you need to get out. You need to go. You need to go. You need to get out of here. And I would always be like, yep, I'm checking my stuff off. I will leave when the stuff is checked off. I was always very nice about it, but they would always, you need to get out of here. We got calls waiting. And that was always something we would say to each other. We got calls waiting. So they let me drive 20 minutes down to the hospital. And I get a call from one of them, like, hey, you're just wondering, do you have this item on your ambulance? And I was like, yep, I should. And they're like, are you sure? I was like, well, I should. There was one there yesterday, and I was checking today. It should be there. And like, oh well, go ahead and check for me. So I check. And I'm like, oh yeah, looks like I got 2. Like, well, you need to have 3. Where's your 3rd one? And I go, I don't know. Do you have it? And they're like, yep, we did a random item check. And you didn't pass, so you need to come back to base. We're going to talk about this. And so I told John, I was like, John, you're not going to believe it. They took something off of our thing, because I hadn't been able to prove that they were doing this yet. But I was just like, John, I'm pretty sure they're taking stuff off of our ambulance. And I was like, John, you're not going to believe it. I knew they were doing that. I knew they were taking stuff off. And he's like, what? Are you kidding? And John was mad for me. And so they bring me back. And they want to talk to specifically me. They don't even want to talk to John, because that's the thing. John would not let something like that slide. They didn't let John be in the room when they talked to me. When the 2 bosses talked to me, they were like, you've continued to be disrespectful to this company, and you again have shown that you were not prepared to do your job, and we need you to sign this paper saying that you purposely did not check off your truck today, and you were not prepared to like save lives or something like that. And I was like, I'm not signing that until you admit to me that you purposely took something out of my ambulance. And like, well, this is just like a random item check, so yes, we did take it. And I'm like, okay, admit to me that you singled me out. I was like, did you do this to anyone else? And they're like, well, it's a random. They kept saying, it's a random item check. Like, it just happened to be you. I was like, no. Have you done this to anyone else? And I don't know why they didn't lie. They should have just lied. And like, no, you're the only one we've done it to. I was like, okay. So you randomly picked me to randomly item check. Just want to get that straight. And they're like, sure. Like, yeah, it's a random item check. I'm like, okay, I got it. I understand where we're at. And I was like, I says, I don't know what your problem with me is. And maybe, And the best part, the original guy wasn't even in on this conversation. This was completely removed of that. But I was like, just wanted to make sure. The best part is we ran the best operation out of pretty much everyone. There's a couple other people that were good. Other people had filthy ambulances. Other people would sleep during transports while they're taking care of somebody. So when it was time to move, it was time to go. And I quit with, I don't know, like a week notice. And I left a little note that said, "See ya," on my uniform. And I said goodbye to those guys. So that's my experience. Other people have really good experiences with the EMS, but I did not, unfortunately. Again, you decide. Maybe it's me.